Hey, this is Dave from metalepidemic.com. Thank you for checking out our YouTube video. Please feel free to hit the subscribe button below if you like this type of content, and we hope you enjoy the review. So, for this review, Duncan and I have been checking out Project Regeneration Vol.1 from the creators of Evil Disco, the one and only Static X. This album was due for release on July 10th via Otsego Entertainment Group. Project Regeneration Vol.1 features 12 brand new Static X tracks containing many of the final vocal performances and musical compositions by Wayne Static, along with the original Wisconsin Death Trip lineup of bassist Tony Campos, drummer Ken J, and guitarist Koichi Fukuda. The album has been produced by Ulrich Wild, who produced and or mixed all but two albums by the band in the past. So, Duncan, you and I have been pretty much following this band since day one.
Yes, that you brought them to my attention, and you brought them to my attention right after they released Wisconsin Death Trip. So we've been there from the first album.
We probably met around that time.
Yes, yep, it's safe to say. Yeah, that would have been 99.
99,
yeah.
So you could say this, the Wisconsin Death Trip was a bit of a soundtrack to our college years.
I thought you were going to go one step further. Soundtrack to our adulthood, soundtrack to our lives, Duncan. Yeah.
No, I do.
Such classic songs as Shit in a Bag. I mean, it really does speak volumes about how our friendship has grown.
I do have a lot of memories that are linked to that time and that album.
Yep. I saw them on that tour.
Oh, did you?
Yes. Saw them on that tour, supported by Apartment 26, I want to say.
Oh, you loved Apartment 26, didn't
I
you?
fucking loved Apartment 26. I was all about Apartment 26, who were the kind of poppier Static X, really.
Yeah.
And I want to say Kitty. I think Kitty also supported Static X on that tour, which is a nuts lineup when I think about it now.
But so it's been 6 years since the passing of Wayne Static, but it wasn't until late 2016 that Tony Campos started to revisit some of the old demos that Wayne had recorded. And now these vocal recordings were done sometime between Shadow Zone in 2003 and Start a War, which was 2005. So we're talking like post Wisconsin Death Trip, which is interesting because there are certain songs on this album that have that kind of evil disco sound from Wisconsin Death Trip.
Yeah.
Part of that may be down to the fact that it's the same lineup from that album on this album. But Tony did also say that while he loved the vocal takes that Wayne did on those demos, musically it wasn't strong enough to use on the album they were recording at the time. So he decided to revisit those demos and write some heavier, almost Wisconsin style riffs underneath Wayne's voice. But in saying that, I think they've actually done a pretty good job of representing the whole Static X sound.
Yep.
There are obviously moments that hark back to the Wisconsin era, but there are also moments that kind of give a nod to albums that preceded it. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, there's a bit of Shadow Zone in here for sure, and a tiny little bit of Start a War. Weirdly enough, they haven't really delved into any areas where the guys weren't in the band, if you know what I mean. So like on something like Cannibal, for example, there's not much of a vibe there, but then ostensibly Wayne Static was the only kind of original member by that point. So I mean that makes sense. They've certainly captured they've captured the vibe and sound of 99 to circa 2006, 2007. Yeah. It sounds pretty much in there. So if you were a fan of that particular style of Static X, there's probably, this is one that's going to more pique your interest, I would imagine, than something kind of going towards the later end, which, to be honest, was it 9 years since our previous album, I think?
Yeah, something like that.
which is fucking nuts. So yeah.
Yeah. I'd say whether it be like a certain chord structure or a kind of vocal phrasing or melody, I think this is an album that kind of embodies the 10 years this band were kind of creating music. For example, Worth Dying For, which I think is track 3, it does have a very Bled for Days kind of tight rhythm and tempo, but it's kind of loaded with some really kind of catchy melodies as well.
Which is what he was doing later on, to be fair. Yeah. His involvement, Wayne did vocals for Queen of the Damned soundtrack. Remember Jonathan Davis did all the songs and sang in the movie, but because of studio rights, this is the bullshit you have to get into, he couldn't release the album singing on it, but you could go and see the movie and hear it. It's just fucking stupid. Anyway, he picked like a plethora of other kind of new metal-y vocalists to sing, and Wayne did specifically vocals on that, which led to the influence of them doing Shadow Zone, which is basically an album about vampires in the future. And there was a noticeable change to him singing on that, like actual melody. So, and there's still bits of that in here as well. Whereas you listen to Wisconsin Death Trip, it's fairly monotone, and that suits the music, because the music is, for all intents and purposes, Dave, fairly monotone. That's what kind of gave it its edge. It was all those kind of, in a lot of respects, kind of recycled and heavied up white zombie riffs, with the kind of disco beats underneath. So so I was actually quite surprised to see that, because once again they're talking about the eras that they have pulled the vocals from, and these weren't tracks strong enough to make albums, that I just assumed it wouldn't be any of the catchy stuff, because you would put the catchy stuff on the album you were putting out. You wouldn't hold that back. So I was pleasantly surprised by that. Yeah.
And those kind of disco beats are still throughout this album as well. Terminator Oscillator has that kind of almost kind of push it feel to it. Rhythmically, it's got that, the kind of driving disco style beat they're known for, but it's also got a lot of like really cool kind of twisted electronics fused through it, which it put me in mind of a couple of the tracks on Cannibal. Electronics wise, anyway. All These Years was one of the tracks they released as a single, and actually I really dug this track. It's got a right kind of dark atmosphere to it. It's one of the more kind of ominous sounding tracks on the album, but it still has that kind of groove that Static X do so well. And you know what? It sounds really tight. Like for a band that haven't played with each other for a very, very long time, they sound like they haven't really stopped playing together.
Yeah, I think the thing is that, I mean, I don't know what the drummer's been doing, but certainly the other two members, specifically Tony Campos, has never really stopped. I mean, he's been involved with God knows how many other groups and bands and projects and stuff from the point, even when he was still in Static X, he had about 2 or 3 things on the go. What's the name of the drummer? Ken the drummer. No?
Yeah,
Ken. I mean, I don't know specifically what he did, but the guitarist, he was working with loads he was linked to a lot of stuff which didn't sound like Static X, interestingly enough. It's kind of electronic indie stuff he was involved with. So I think they've all kind of kept it going. And I mean, I think they'd been around for a while before they got signed as well. So I mean, it's one of those things that they've been working on this project for a while. So it sounds tight, but this sort of music is only benefited by, this is the sort of music you can't sound sloppy on, you know what I mean? Because it's really not, compared to some of the stuff we've reviewed before where like this proggy stuff's going up and down, like, it's not that sort of music, so it has to be incredibly fucking tight, and they are. On this one, it sounds, if you told me that this was a band that had been releasing albums for, the 9 years in between, I'd totally believe that on first listen. There's nothing here that sounds like there's a bit of ring rust on them or anything. It sounds like they're very much in the headspace of those early years of the band, and as a result, that's what they brought to the record.
Yeah. I read an interview with the drummer Ken G, and he said that the first rehearsal that they had, There were only like 15 seconds into the first song, which was Bled for Days. And he said instantly it just felt like he was back in Static X, and everything just kind of fit together. And you can totally hear that on this album. One of my favourites on the album though was a track called "Something of My Own."
So this is the old new lineup.
Yes.
Yes, this is like so. There's, as we're saying that, there's 3 songs on here that essentially have their new vocalist, and if you believe rumor on the internet, Dave, and I do in this case, it's the singer of Dope. Unless that news has been broken that it's not him, and it might not.
I think it is him. I'm pretty sure it is him.
I would make fucking sense. I'm with you on this one. Actually, weirdly, and I might get shot down for this, I thought most of the highlights on the record for me were actually with the new lineup.
All right, okay.
I was quite enjoying that side of things, but we'll get into that discussion towards the end, Dave. Hold it back.
I did. I really enjoyed that track. It's completely drenched in new metal goodness. Like it's so metal, so new metal. It's unbelievable. And it's kind of driven forward with this really kind of chunky groove riff, which is awesome in itself. But when the chorus kicks in, it just makes the track feel complete. I thought vocally, I had a very kind of Jonathan Davis kind of vibe to it.
Yep.
And I thought the electronics were all kind of perfectly balanced on it as well. Really good track, actually. It's one that I went back to a few times when I was listening to the album. I really dug that one. The following track after that is Otsego Placebo. I think that's how you pronounce it.
Continuing obviously.
Yeah, exactly.
The theme, which I quite like. It wouldn't be really a Static X album without Otsego being somewhere referenced. In a track titles. I quite like that.
Yeah, I dug it. I quite liked the track as well. It kind of upped the ante in terms of electronics and kind of industrial elements. It's still very heavy and got a kind of bounce to it, but it definitely had a darker tone overall, which I really liked. To be honest, for me, there wasn't much on this I didn't like. I thought it was a very easy album to listen to. There was maybe 2 or 3 tracks that I didn't stop and go, "Oh, that's a cool riff," or "That's a really kind of well executed melody." But overall, I think it's a very solid album, and I think most importantly, I think they kind of managed to capture the kind of heart and soul of Static X on this release. I don't think the fans will be disappointed with this album in the slightest.
I think you're probably right. I think, which brings me to my, not even an issue, but I have a concern with a release like this.
Okay.
And it's probably worth saying. I mean, on a purely music basis, which I imagine is kind of what anyone listening to a review of a Static X album wants to hear. It's a perfectly fine album. It's not anywhere near the best of Static X. It's nowhere near the worst of Static X. Some of the tracks, specifically on Cannibal, are nigh on unlistenable in my opinion. Just so far removed from where they started. And there's a couple of songs on Machine that I don't like, and that's very, very close.
Yeah.
To their highlight, which really is Wisconsin Death Trip. I don't think they ever bettered that. No. Cynically, it's difficult not to look at this and see it as a release of a Static X album by 3 members of the band who were essentially removed from the band, not amicably is worth saying, right? From the band by the singer who retained the name, who has now since passed on, and the 3 guys that were taken out of the band have reunited back together again and taken the vocals of that singer to put it back over and release a Static X album. And I feel like that concerns me slightly. It's all to do with legacy. I obviously don't know what the last days of Wayne Static were like. I don't know if he'd mended the fences with Tony or whatever, but I mean, I would imagine it would have to be some sign off from his estate, but granted that his wife has also passed since. I don't know who's in charge of that estate or who signs off on that, or if that's a record label, or or whatnot, or if that's just free game because they had they're on those tracks as well. But I get kind of skeevy about this. It's the same way I felt when they went on tour and basically their new singer dressed up like a zombie Wayne Static. I don't know how that sits with me, Dave, if I'm honest. And you are right, musically there's a lot on here that sounds very like stereotypical Better Days Static X, and I don't understand why they just can't release an album of that without regurgitating things that Wayne Static wrote, because clearly the songs that Wayne is not on with their new singer sound great. So to me, just it comes across as part of it comes across as a way to placate fans who never got that kind of closing of the chapter. But when you put Volume 1 in the title of your album, I think there's more in the pipeline of this.
There is.
And I just personally think, to me, that, I don't know. Like I say, when the band separated and before Wayne died, he had mended all the bridges and all the rest, then maybe it's not as bad. But he had a brand new band by then, and wasn't making, to the best of my knowledge anyway, any swerves back that way. If anything, he was actually quite vocal about his position on it. So to me, that just doesn't sit right. I don't know if people would be forgiven if like Axl Rose died and then all of a sudden, and this is before the band reunited, and then Slash and Duff just got back together and we've got some things that, I don't know how that works, Dave. And to me, that's a troubling aspect removed from the music. I mean, the music alone, if you're a Static X fan, you will enjoy it. Like Dave says, it flies in. It's very, very easy to listen. Incredibly easy to listen, actually. But in the back of my head, motive for releasing the album is something that I'm wary of. I do sometimes feel that there is a certain point where legacy is important, specifically in bands that have garnered a very strong fandom, and I don't understand why you can't just do, like Project Regeneration, just call it that, just call your band that, and just do new songs. Something of My Own is arguably one of the best songs on here, and it doesn't feature anything by Wayne Static at all, so they can do it. That is my only concern. I have been troubling with this all day since the album came through. It's something that's kept going through my head, is how would I feel in that position? And personally, I just feel a bit uncomfortable, David Sword, a bit skeeved by it. I find it as, a way where you could be Project Regeneration out there and play Static X songs, that's fine, you know what I mean? But on an album, we'll probably talk about it on our main episode of the podcast, which you should check out. There's another album which has been released in the last month with a dead singer on it, and I kind of feel the same way about that as well. So there we go.
I know what you're saying. I think there was an interview with members of the band. They did say that they kind of met up with his sister and stuff, so I don't know if she had anything to do with it. I'm not entirely sure. I don't know the background of it. I do know that they were talking in an interview of a Volume 2, so there is something else in the pipeline. I don't know if that includes vocals of Wayne's or if this is going to be just the new vocalist going forward. I'm not entirely sure, but I know what you're saying. I tried to kind of just separate when I was listening to it and kind of not like try and get my head around the politics of what went on. So I enjoyed the album without thinking about it too much, if you know what I mean.
Without being a Duncan, I enjoyed this album.
The last track I really enjoyed. It's very different to the rest of the album. Kind of hears the band go down a more kind of somber, kind of melodic road. There's an appearance from Al Jorgensen from Ministry as well. I thought it was a really cool way to end the album, and because it's so different, it leaves a bit of a kind of lasting impression as the last track. I quite enjoyed that. Overall, I enjoyed it. It gives you exactly what you want from a Static X album. As you said, it's not as good as Wisconsin. I don't think it'd be very difficult to better that album. But
they had years and years to try and better it, and they couldn't. So
but in saying that, I'd still say this is much better than some of their other stuff they did as well. Rating wise, I have no idea where you're going to go with this, but I am going to sit at this at a 4 out of 5.
I'm just a little bit below you. I'm a 3.5 out of 5.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay,
it's like, to be honest with you, Wisconsin Death Trip's a 5-star album for me. I think it's a fucking brilliant album. Nothing that band has released since would go over a 4 for me. I think there's a gulf between. There's a lot of filler on a lot of that, which is I suppose is one of the good points about this particular release is there ain't no filler on this one. Whereas pretty much everything else they put out there's a good couple of filler tracks in there where you're like, bad writing day. It's also worth saying Ulrich Wilde back to, I love his production. I've always loved his production. Yeah. He's got a really good grasp of industrial and electronic feels, and he brings a lot of that here. And I see you, Running Man sample, and I approve.
Yeah, so if you want to check this one out, it will drop on July 10th. It's called Project Regeneration Vol.1. If you want to check out the band, you'll find them on Facebook, facebook.com/StaticX. Simple as that. Hope you enjoyed the review, guys. We'll be back very soon with another review. Until then, take care. I'll speak to you soon.
Bye.